Please welcome Leila Tolderlund.
Is it on? Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for joining me and for your interest in local place ecology. My name, is Leila Tolderlund. I'm from Denmark, but I teach at University of Colorado in Denver. I grew up on a small island, right over the hill where the windmill is. I have a background in engineering, and I'm a landscape architect. I both teach and I practice, and I could talk a lot about that. I think that's really important, to actually have students out, put things in the ground, and also to develop theory. So later, in a minute, I'm going to talk about theory, so I wanted to also ground us that I actually practice a couple of my projects. Here's one example, also using things that are of a place, that are in place, in this case a local native prairie that's sort of extended and wrapped onto a building in Pueblo, Colorado. So native prairie, green roof. Another recent project, a green wall at the Denver International Airport at a restaurant called Root Down, so mixing plants and things of the place, in this case leftover tin can lids, that's incorporated as art, a byproduct of the restaurant. So I operate primarily in that transition zone between the inside and the outside, really thickening, programming, harvesting, occupying, and growing that transition zone between the inside and the outside, where architecture meets landscape, where city becomes nature or nature becomes city, and where buildings become alive in the skin, in the surface. What can we produce, grow, and harvest, and what does that mean? Well, it could, for example, mean this. The algae house done by Splitterwerk, cross-disciplinary design team, microalgae cultivated in a second bioskin made of glass, shade, energy, food, ink, to name a few of the things that are being produced. In this green infrastructure project, the green and the living is fitted thoughtfully, intimately, well to optimize performance and longevity. Here's another example from my teaching, H2Grow, one of my graduate students, cross-disciplinary teams, the winning entry in the Research and Innovation Global category at last year's World Green Infrastructure Conference in Bogota. Inspired by the Namib desert beetle, uses its small bumps on its backside to capture the water from the atmosphere. So similarly, this passive water acquisition module collects humidity from the air to allow plants to thrive in semi-arid climates. So optimized to best support the plant life for the life of the project. So this fitting of the green and the infrastructure is about materials, it's about surfaces, textures, specific shapes of pockets for most appropriate plant material. So this particular presentation really intersects two areas of my research. So there's this green infrastructure, especially fitting the green and the infrastructure. And then there's this metacognition in design. So design thinking, thinking about thinking, reflective practice, using things of local place to arrive at a more holistic way of thinking about design and arriving at creativity as design thinkers, which includes all of us, right? So I want to talk about that importance of the use of authentic material practices in architecture, landscape architecture, urban planning to grow the human capacity. So to facilitate that connection to place, to authentic self, to moments of mindfulness where creative thinkers can access that space between our thoughts, the place where innovative and new ideas come from, using local materials already by nature ingrained with local ecological process. So the result is a responsible way of creating place. So what is that? For example, things that are there, teepee, the contemporary version of that, yurts in Kyrgyzstan with small cafes, or sand, Nada Khalil's super adobe structures in California turned into housing materials for man-made and natural disaster. And to quote Khalil, to build simple and safe emergency structures, providing maximum safety with minimum environmental impact, we must choose natural materials and, like nature itself, built with a minimum of materials to create maximum space, so that we can think about beehive or seashell. Ice, here's the igloo, historically rooted in local material, readily available on site. And the contemporary version of that, in northern Sweden, the Ice Hotel, opened in 1990, used to be erected anew every year, December through April, harvesting ice blocks from the nearby Torn River. And now planned actually to be open 365 days a year, run on solar power. And staying with ice, here's a current futuristic proposal, the Mars Ice House, winner of NASA 3D Printed Habitat Challenge 2015, where a group of space engineers proposed to use a unique 3D printed technique to harness the physics of water and its phase transition to construct a habitat in the northern hemisphere of Mars, where water is thought to be abundant. Or stone, or rock. Here's a cave, the contemporary version of that, Frank Lloyd Wright, Taliesin West, where local stones, in this case simply out of necessity because he didn't have the money, was used to build the building, combined with canvas, reference to Native American teepee. Or the digital detox, so feeling privacy, safety, and a sense of being home is increasingly important in a world with relentless monitoring, messaging, and demand of instant digital response. I was just thinking about how, like, what's my favorite nature place? How about we go out and just feel it instead of going online and looking at what do everyone else think? What does it actually feel like? Remoteness becomes a luxury. Another contemporary example using stone in this remote digital detox project, bringing out the spirit of the essential as a counter to the many things in life we don't appreciate. The main objective here is using stone of the place to give the visitor a chance to simply be. 130,000 stones. Slowness, simplicity, silence. Being alone to better be you, to find the space, the silence, to enjoy the beauty of living. Building materials include the fabric of life, of local materials, of native place. So to this project, Hybrid Muscle in Thailand, RNC with filmmaker Philip Perino, a straightforward client commission to create an exhibition space for visiting artists on a piece of land in the field of rice paddies, creating its own electricity to remain off the power grid, using a water buffalo, steadily working an elaborate system of pulleys, like a walking caterpillar across the landscape, a basic tented shelter with electricity produced by an animal, stored in a battery for later use for lighting and computers, using simply things of the place. And here land artist Michael Goldsworthy, primarily using things that are there. Part of his process largely depends on creating a personal connection, a rooting, a becoming a native of place, and a learning and becoming familiar by building and rebuilding. The art of making with your hands. He speaks about the energy that runs through, flowing through the landscape and flowing through materials. Not to capture it clearly, but to participate in it. So using materials where the very thing that brought it to life also will be the thing that brings it to death. So the circle of life. Works exist for a moment in time, and he talks about the anticipation of that one moment, the one time and place that brings full presence, intimacy, authenticity, and timelessness. And lastly, architect Kengo Kuma compares the fitting of green and infrastructure with the medical industry of prosthetics, where the fitting is done so well that you forget that the arm or the leg is artificial. It requires an intimate understanding of what makes plants happy. It's a shaping of elements and materials, size, surface, temperature, texture, fitting. He also talks about the importance of respecting the spirit of the material to achieve a deeper understanding of sustainability. Here, reclaimed wood from old homes and landscapes in the region. Great Bamboo Hall, also one of his projects, with the bamboo forest in the distance, using things that are there: void, light, time, smell, bamboo. Local ecology in the four seasons, for example, rain. On a rainy day when materials are wet, a special light reflects back. Rain can bring about the smell of childhood. And he concludes, curiously, a rainy day is a good day. Working with weathered materials rooted in place gives the maker a unique opportunity to participate in the making of a place. With your own hands, with your own heart, the making of a home, the making of a shelter, using local materials, a way to lose yourself into a place, and a way to find a truer you in local place ecology. Thank you.